Good evening. Welcome to the Common Council meeting on this Tuesday, October 25th at the Council Chambers. Call to order, roll call. Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, public comment period, correspondence. At this time, I will recognize those members of the public who have indicated a desire to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council, first stating their name and address. The council may act on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. First, Bill Panker.
Good evening, William Penker, 600 Sycamore Avenue. I have two items of concern related to economic development. And normally I would address these to our Development Services Department, but with three key positions vacant, I bring the concerns to you. Several years ago, Marathon County and the city of Wausau adopted a new slogan and logo. As I recall the occasion, they wanted to present a more dynamic and forward-thinking image. Recently, the city of Merrill introduced a new logo and slogan, as well as a marketing campaign to attract new residents and tourism. And the logo and slogan were described in a news story posted on October 12th. Question I pose, is it time for Marshfield to have a new logo and a new city slogan to better represent us as a dynamic, progressive, forward-thinking 21st century community? And a news story posted on October 18 noted that Stevens Point is working to create a business incubator facility. This would provide space for entrepreneurs to start, develop, and advance new business and manufacturing enterprises. And Stevens Point will be funding a feasibility study to assess the need for an incubator. Now, not being as deep into the information pipeline as some people think I am, I asked the following. Do we have one? If we do, where has it been hiding? 3, if we do, how long has it been operating and how many clients have used it? And if we don't have an incubator, is there no need, or is its development stalled or possibly dead because of inaction? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Panker. Andy Keel.
I'm Andy Keogh. I live at 1715 North Apple in Marshfield. I'm a little upset that Bill has his all written out and reads it. I have to wing it, I'm afraid. There are a couple of things that I'm concerned about that I think the council should know and might best come from a member of the Police and Fire Commission, which is my role here tonight. I had the opportunity to visit with neighbors that I haven't had for a while because it was so nice this weekend and everyone is out. And I was asked almost uniformly, what did the fire department do to screw up so badly that there's a $100,000 deficit in the city's budget? On Monday afternoon, I met with a group of firefighters and they reported that they are getting the same questions from citizens, their neighbors. What did you guys do to screw up so badly that the city is $600,000 in the hole? To my knowledge, that is not true, and I feel badly that the firefighters have to put up with that kind of questioning when it is not accurate. I don't know, we don't have the sources we once had to speak to the community all at one time, but a lot of people watch these meetings, and so that's an opportunity. My recollection is that years ago in the early 90s, someone had the bright idea for the enterprise fund that allowed the city to have an ambulance service that didn't cost the taxpayers anything. It would pay for itself through the fees that were charged for the service. And that worked very well for quite a long while. I remember when I started on the Police and Fire Commission that the commission asked the city if we could have financials on the enterprise fund, and we were told the enterprise fund was the business of the city, not of the Police and Fire Commission, and no, you aren't going to see financials. We have never seen financials for the enterprise fund, never knew how much was in it. Every year, finance told us this is the amount you have to spend out of the enterprise fund to support the ambulance service. And every year, that's what the fire department spent, excepting one year, when they overspent by $300. We never knew how much there was. We never knew how much, other than the amount we were told could be spent out of the enterprise fund to support the ambulance service, and that's what we did. And on May 31st of this year, the new financial director commented to the fire chief, you know, we're going to have to do something about that $600,000 shortfall. Had no idea there was any shortfall. The fire department was not responsible in any way for that $600,000. Now, I don't want to talk about what happened in the city because I don't understand it, but it is not the fire department, and individual firemen shouldn't be jacked up by neighbors because of that shortfall. That's not their responsibility. They have done nothing wrong. Now, if it weren't for all of that going on, we would, as a commission, be preparing to ask you to hire significant additional firefighters. The ambulance service will see probably 4,200 calls this year. We have firefighters that are just running out of energy. They get a day off where they can recover, and they're called in the next day because they're short. Combine that, and the attitude, they're tired of it. And they feel as if they don't have the support they should have. Combine that with places like Wausau hiring 12 new firefighters this year, Wisconsin Rapids hiring 6 new firefighters, Menominee hiring, 7 or 8. I heard different numbers today when I was over there. Combine all of that together, and if you were in Wausau and responsible for hiring 12 new firefighters, where would you look? The well-trained, excellent firefighters in Marshfield? Count on it. Not only are we short, we're going to lose employees in the fire department because others appear to be more concerned and more willing to support that part of their city's government. I don't know that I can tell you what the solution is, but I want to warn you now. We are short, we need more, and we're going to lose some of what we have. And that is my biggest concern as a member of the commission. And I wanted to share that with you so you can have a little advanced organizer and begin thinking about what Marshfield's response to those circumstances might be.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Seeing none, we'll go on to item D, approval minutes, October 11th, 2022 regular meeting and October 17th, 2022 budget meeting. Motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Wagner. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. All ayes, thank you. Item E, staff updates. Update regarding taxi complaints presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. And this, for people who haven't seen this on the agenda, this does not mean there's a problem. We agreed 2 years ago to have periodic updates here, just what's going on with the taxi cab service, because people sometimes hear complaints and hear different things, so we want to make sure we're on top of it. During the 2022 to date, from January 1st until now, the city has received 10 complaints about the taxi service. Now, again, realize that we don't hear them all. Some people might call the service directly and say, hey, why wasn't I picked up on time or whatever? All we know about are the ones that are brought to our attention. Of these 10, 4 of them were regarding wait times, where people felt they waited too long for a taxi. In follow-up, the provider apologized on 3 occasions, indicating that the taxi was swamped, that they had way more calls than they had people to answer them at that time. The 4th one, they indicated there was no record of the call in question. They didn't even know about it according to what they had in their files. 2 of the 10 were regarding treatment of people that the complainant thought was maybe not appropriate. One of those resolved, another was a staff issue that was referred to management for further follow-up. One was the issue of time calls, and maybe you've heard these before, where someone will call and say, I want to be picked up tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. You can make that call to the taxi service, but it's a shared ride taxi service, and they need to respond to people calling at the time. So just because you say 8 o'clock doesn't mean they'll be there right at 8 o'clock. I think in this instance, they were there at 8:10 or whatever, 10 minutes late from when the person had requested it. And, the driver indicated that, had other calls that they had to deal with. One was about, and I'm glad I get the opportunity to mention this, about service level. Someone who thinks that they should be taken right up to the building, not just dropped off at the sidewalk, but actually walked into the building, helped into the building because of some mobility issues, and they're just not allowed to do that. So the provider let them know that that's something that the taxi service is not really permitted to do. They're not allowed to do door service. Another one was an equipment issue that was resolved. And then finally, one where the person said that they just weren't getting an answer. The phone kept ringing. And again, the provider apologized for this and said that they were just deluged with calls at that time of day. So overall, 10 calls in 10 months. I feel like from what I'm hearing and seeing that the service runs rather well. I think they get pretty good marks overall. It doesn't mean that there's not a concern now and then. But again, people have to realize it's a shared ride service, which means that when they're coming from wherever to pick you up, if somebody calls, they have to stop and pick that person up along the way. So it's not like a taxi per se, the way you typically think of taxi service. And I think that that's a positive indication that running is doing their job. Can I throw in one more other update real quickly that's not on the list? It's been brought to my attention by a member of this council that they would like to have the people who request money from the city that are non-governmental agencies. We get a handful of those every year, people looking for budget funds, that we have them come to the next meeting on Tuesday, November 1st at 5:30 p.m., make brief presentations, answer questions about their requests. And I give it to this body. Unless there's any objection, I would request that we go ahead and do that for your next meeting. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Steve. Item F, my comments, the employee recognition, Pat Zebbs, Police Department, 25 years. Congratulations, Pat Zebbs. And I just want to put an extra little note. The house that is not there anymore on 4th Street looks fabulous. The property looks great. It's all seated over and it looks like it's ready for action again. So we get a chance to go down 4th Street, take a look at the house that's not there. Item G, council comments. Item H, reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Mike Myers from.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mike Myers from the Police and Fire Commission.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. I think Annie Keel covered much of what anybody could say as far as the sentiment of the other members of the Police and Fire Commission. I also met with a group of firefighters yesterday. It's something that I do on a regular basis. We meet with each of the 3 shifts at the fire department. I also meet with the different shifts at the police department to keep communications open and to get a line on what they feel is important to them and that they have an opportunity to share some of the concerns that they have. Andy pretty much covered what the input we got yesterday. I'm anticipating much of the same tomorrow and another meeting on Thursday. It's frustrating to be in a position to represent those 2 departments, especially the fire department, because it's an obligation that I took on as a volunteer, as a citizen, because of my interest in local government. I've also sat in your chair, Mayor, I've sat in your chair. I know what you're looking at. Budget is like the happiest time of the year. And the one thing about the budget is that if you know what the budget is, you know what's going to happen in the city for the coming year. It's a forecast and it's a planning tool. I'm here to tell you that of all the options and all the hard work, especially with Alderman Wagner that has put into this and the input that he's solicited from different people, myself included, the 3 plans, the 3-tier plan system, there are good parts to every one of them, but there's not one in my mind that sticks out as being the perfect one. We would like to get out from underneath the professional charges. We would like, especially for people to know that the option of losing 3 firefighters, EMT, paramedics in the fire department is not an option. We are, as Andy mentioned, we have people running with as many as 24 calls a day on the ambulance. They go home at 7 or 8 o'clock the next morning and they're called back in again. There's nothing that we can do about that. We can't back off on the number of calls that we're taking. Who would have known that we'd be up 20% in the number of calls and we're going to hit 4,200 calls this year. It's to be expected in a community like this. We are a medical facility in Marshfield. We're a go-to, a destination for medical help. They are a trauma unit at Marshfield Medical Center. And this is a compliment to that. We have to expect that. We have to expect the people that I went to school with a couple of years ago, went somewhere else, raised a family, had a career, and are coming back to Marshfield because they want to be close to the medical facility. The same cycle happened in the last 20 years with my folks. So many of their friends, when they got turned to 65 years old, looked to coming back to Marshfield, buying a house and settling here so that they could be close to the medical facility. I guess the only real point I have to make, and I've got to be stronger on it now than I have been all along, is that losing 3 firefighters, 3 members of the Marshfield Rescue Department is not an option. I'm more than willing to work with anybody. The commission has been working with the members of the council. We've been working with the finance department to try to come to some solution with the administrator. But our obligation is as strong as yours is. Your obligation is to represent the citizens of Marshfield in each of your districts, and my obligation and the other members of the Police and Fire Commission is to try to solicit advice that would help you make your decisions easier, and that's what we're trying to do. But I sat here last night during the budget, and I'm thinking it's not the time. And I sat and thought about it today, and when is the time to point out that we can't consider losing 3 people? And we will work with you. I'm encouraged by the fact that everybody is so interested in it. There's nothing wrong with that. If we had 10 people that agreed on everything, we wouldn't need a city council. We'd just get a bunch of bobbleheads and they'd just say yes to everything. We will continue to work with you, and I'm encouraged by that fact that it's not a closed door policy, it's wide open, and I think everybody's in the mood to get things done. So we're available for questions anytime. We've got some good people running the departments, especially in the fire and police departments. The chief is taking this on, and he's doing a wonderful job, and his help as well as some of the deputy chiefs. So you've got that working in your favor. They're soliciting ideas from other communities. They're looking at cost-saving measures. They're turning every stone so we can maybe come to some kind of solution. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. Item I, consent agenda. Meeting minutes reports. Motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Paschal. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. All ayes, thank you. So we'll skip over item J. Item K, presentation Vandahay Waters 2022 season report presented by Justin Casperson, Parks and Recreation Director.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us. Alderman Witzel asked for this last month, and we presented it to our Park Rec Forestry Committee at our October meeting, and now we're going to present it to you tonight. I will just introduce Amanda. She'll be doing most of the talking. Amanda, if you don't know her, she is our recreation manager. She's been with the city now since August of last year, so a little over a year. One of her main job duties is the operations of Vandahay Pool. Obviously, it's a big operation. It's awfully big when you're new to the city and new to a large operation like the pool. So I got to commend Amanda for a job well done this year on learning on the fly and doing a great job with the staff and the patrons. Obviously, there's always learning curves, but there's like that with everything you do. So what I'm going to do now is just turn it over to Amanda.
Hello. So I'm the recreation manager at the Parks and Rec. It was my first real full year doing Vandahay. I started after it opened last year. And I was asked to put together this little summary report of kind of what went on down there this year. So we had a total attendance of around 35,000 people, which was about double whatever HEFCO had. Honestly, I was expecting that number to be a little bit higher with the facility, but I checked with Rapids, and theirs is fairly new also, and they had around 31,000 people attend their facility. So with new aquatic facilities, we're not under by any means. And then the total revenue was just over $234,000, and then total expenses came in just under $300,000. I have details on all that stuff further in the packet. The total seasonal attendance, I did a graph there just out of sheer curiosity if temperature had anything to do with it. So that's what that orange line is on there. But it just kind of shows the growth of how many people went this year versus HEFCO. And then the little box underneath shows that 64% of people who went to Vandahay paid a day pass versus 36% of people entered with a season pass, which was quite interesting. We put a lot of work into the season passes, and I was kind of expecting that to at least be 50-50. And then on the bottom there, it shows that our busiest day of the week was actually Tuesday, which is also extremely surprising, but it just kind of shows that between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, people are really honestly leaving town. So and we actually had that with another report that we ran for Wenzel, that the fountain usage was the highest on Tuesdays also, which is kind of weird, but interesting. And then the next page, it shows the revenue, and I tracked that with attendance just to, again, out of sheer curiosity to see how that would look next to each other. The history shows with HEFCO that even when attendance was up and down, the revenue stayed consistent in my eyes. And then it's nice to see that with an extremely higher amount of attendance, there's an extremely higher amount of revenue with Vandahay. And then the couple boxes below show the summary. You guys can just kind of look at that one. And then the cash and check breakdown versus credit card and debit card breakdown, again, was something that was really surprising to me. We do accept all forms of payment down there, and I was seriously expecting it to be more like half and half, if not way more credit transactions than cash. So that's just the interesting point there. And then that revenue per week is just to see if it was consistent from last year to this year, because we were open for such a short period of time last year. And it was about the same. The next page shows the attendance per day. And then I think a question came up about us being closed quite often. So I wanted to see if that was actually the case historically, or how that compared historically. So it shows that we were actually open a higher percentage of what we had scheduled. We were open actual higher amount of hours than any previous year. So we were open 83% of the time that we were supposed to be open. And that's due to weather, fecal incidents, all that good stuff. And then also on that, the smaller chart on the bottom, it shows we had a ton more scheduled hours on top of that, which was the goal too, I think. So, and then the last page is the fun page. It shows the expenses. There's a summary at the top of operating supplies, wages, utilities, that kind of stuff. I thought it was important to show the difference between the wages at HEFCO versus the wages at Vandehay. Obviously, it takes a lot more manpower to run that aquatic facility than it did at HEFCO, so that's why that HEFCO at 30,000 was highlighted, and the wages at Vandehay are almost 180,000. And then the next chart shows historically what revenue versus expenses looked like at HEFCO, and then obviously the COVID years are in here too. But that revenue to expenses ratio is decreasing from Vandehay for the past 2 years. So that's a good trend to see. And then I gave a little breakdown of the staff summary. You guys can look that over and ask me any questions you might have there, but I'm not going to go over that in detail. And then the facility summary just kind of goes over the amenities. I assume everybody knows, but maybe not. There's rock wall there, high dive, low dive, activity pools, slides, lap swim, zero entry pool, kiddie pool area, outdoor game area, concession stand, rentable shelter, and we do party packages there also. A couple points that I thought were important is that we had double the attendance compared to what HEFCO had in the past, and the fact that we had more actual open hours compared to what was scheduled, I thought was really important too. Anybody have any questions?
Alderman Witzel?
Thank you. Thank you for this information. The concern I have, I guess, is on the closures. And I understand that there are some things that are beyond control. Weather is a big one, and of course, the occasional fecal accident is another issue. If I'm seeing this correctly, on this chart on the third page, the colored ones are the days that you were either closed partially or completely?
Yep. So red was closed fully, and yellow was we actually were open for a portion of the day, whether that was an hour or 7 hours. That's factored into the percentage of hours open at the bottom,
okay.
But I didn't break that down in the
So
yellow.
28% of the days you closed for partial or all of the days? That seems significant. And I guess the big concern I have is the low attendance reason for closing.
That is something that we've talked about also. That used to be a major factor in HEFCO. This is a much bigger facility, and we're addressing if we need to close due to low attendance or not moving forward.
That's a huge, huge concern in my mind.
Okay.
Vandehay Waters is a potential large draw from a very large population area in central Wisconsin. If we have people who drive here for an hour to get there and find out that it's closed because there weren't enough people there, they're going to turn around and go elsewhere, and they're not going to come back. As a business owner, there were days that I didn't hit payroll because I didn't have enough business, but I was still open because if people expect you to be open, you better be open. And the people who come to Vandehay also provide business for the businesses that are in the city.
Yep.
So closing for low attendance is a huge concern of mine. And that really bothers me.
Okay.
I realize that there are days you're going to lose money. That's the nature of business.
Yep.
But to have people drive a long distance to turn away because it was closed, and then, like I said, probably never come back again, go to Rapids, go to Wausau, go to some other town, because they're hopefully going to be open even if the attendance is low, that's a hit on our city. So that is a huge concern. The other question I have really quickly, and actually I'm going to yield. I'll let Mrs. Tompkins speak. She's up next. Thank you.
Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question about the day pass. I'm wondering, since we are talking about our city budget and we're talking about how can we make sure that our taxpayers are getting good bang for their buck. Do you do proof of residency when you do day passes?
We have a resident fee and a non-resident fee at the door, and we ask them if they're residents or non-residents in order to pay the rate.
I just wonder if we would make more money if we had a proof of residency with licenses. I'm not sure. That's just a question,
Yeah.
just to make sure that we're actually giving the discount to the people who pay the taxes.
I'm going to take that, but historically, we've had challenges with that. You have young individuals, let's just say 14 coming there. You ask them for residency, they say resident, you take it at face value. On the other side of the counter, you have a 14-year saying, are you resident or non-resident? They're saying, I'm a resident, and you kind of take it at face value, and then they get very argumentative and frustrated that they're being treated so poorly just because they have to provide a residency requirement. A lot of times they'll provide a driver's license that says Marshfield, but no way that 14-year-old knows if they live in the city or out of the city. And it'd be so cumbersome to find out. So we pretty much can identify those individuals we do know who live in the city and those who don't, and we can treat them as so. But our young staff do ask for, do you live in the city or not, a resident or non-resident? And most do say they live in the city or not live in the city. So we do have an honor system, but it's kind of a challenge to ask every single person. And then we're going to have the customer service issue, which people become frustrated with slow lines and then become argumentative and frustrated. So it's a thing we've looked at. And it's not the city of Marshfield. This is just nationwide dealing with that type of relationship at that specific place at that specific time.
That makes sense. Do you do it for people who are buying the year pass or the season pass?
Yeah, that's a significant more money. Obviously, it's $100 and some. That season pass has their names, all their family members, their address, any type of medical conditions or things we have to be aware of. So there's a lot more detail that goes into that pass.
Okay. I have a few more questions, but I'll yield to Mr. Fisher and then we'll just go back.
Alderman Fisher?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're really official today, so that's a change of pace. First of all, I want to commend Parks and Recreation. This is a great report. I wasn't sure what to expect.
Okay.
And this was very transparent, and I really do appreciate it. So I just wanted to say that. So thank you. One thing I'm not surprised that seasonal passes are so low. I was actually thinking it'd probably be in that 30 to 40% range. That was just my guess. And part of me thinks that's probably because it's the first year, obviously. So I'm wondering what kind of mark
charge it. So that was a lot of discussion surrounding that last year when we posted it. We had people just coming up, just asking us basically. I mean, we had a Cyber Monday deal that we started last year, and then we had early bird pricing through, I think, April it was. And then we bumped up the prices by like $5 or $10 per person or something like that. So then for this year, what we plan to do, we're working on it now to put it in the next brochure, which comes out in like a month and a half. But there'll be ideally a discount for renewing their passes online. But again, this is a software issue too, where we have to figure out how to process a renewal for that. So there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes, like more than you can really even imagine probably. So we're hoping to offer a discount for renewing passes, an early bird rate up through April of next year, and then a new rate for the 2023 passes. And we get that out. Honestly, Facebook is probably the main way that we go. We'll probably get with the communications department to get that out with Tom and stuff too.
Just a couple follow-up questions. Are you really kind of even training your staff when people are coming in to, for lack of a better word, kind of trying to upsell them? And I don't even know if that's what, you can do that, but I'm going, okay, they're coming to the door wanting to buy a daily pass. Do you give them the option to buy a season pass even within, let's say, those first few weeks, first month?
So they don't purchase the season passes at Van Hay Waters because, again, I have 14, 15, 16-year-olds working there, and that's,
sure.
I mean, we're talking $61,000 just only in season passes. So we process all of those at the Parks and Rec office. We have directed, if they're asking about the season pass, then they can definitely call our office and we can work it out where they purchase it online and we can have it at Van Hay for them the next day. So we would never deter somebody from purchasing a season pass, but upselling is the wrong term to use at this very moment. And we kind of went through the season pass list, and there was some kids who used their passes like upwards of 60 times. But there is a lot of people middle of the road who were 10 and 20 times. So
Yeah. And then just my last question on revenue and expenses. Obviously, we saw a loss this year, but it looks like we've been seeing losses consistently over the years. What ideas do you as a department have to try make that more budget neutral, if at all possible?
okay. That is going to be a really hard question that I don't know if I know the answer to.
I would say it's a challenge. You just heard Alderman Witzel talk about staying open later when you have low attendance. To stay open later, you have, let's just say 10 lifeguards, 4 attendants, 5 attendants on payroll. So you're open, your operating lights are on, things are moving, but people aren't there. So that's number one. Number two, we've heard keep it affordable, keep it affordable, keep it affordable for our residents. So our fees are lower. Our daily pass was $5. What was Rapids? $7. That gives you an idea. So we kind of have to have that balance of one hand saying keep everything affordable, and then the other hand saying make it more budget neutral. So how do you balance that? You do the best you can without trying to break one or the other. So it's a balancing act.
Alderman Witzel?
Thank you. You just said the day pass is $5. How much is the season pass, out of curiosity?
It's 110 for, 55 for an individual, and then 110 for a family of 3, and then each individual person was $10 per resident. Those are resident rates.
Okay. And to piggyback off of what Mr. Fisher here said, a person comes in, pays the $5 fee, perhaps comes with the whole family, pays $20 to get in. Do you ever offer the option of, hey, just so you know, if you want to come back a lot, you could do a family pass, and hey, if you keep your receipt from today, maybe tomorrow we'll give you that, some of that money off on a season pass? I mean, it's an upsell, if you will, but
Yeah, that way.
it's something that the people working at the counter don't have to deal with, but
Sure.
it encourages those folks then to maybe say, oh yeah, it would be worth, because I already got part of it paid. And
Yeah.
Is that something you think about?
We can definitely think about doing something like that. And then we did have season pass information posted there also. So if they're looking at the $5 day fee and $20 for their family, and they know they're coming multiple times, at that time, they can definitely read about the season pass and get more information from staff.
Right. The only concern at that point is that they're already there. And so then
Yeah,
go get the season.
of course. Yeah.
A couple other quick questions. First of all, I'm not overly concerned with a little bit of loss of money. I don't expect this to be a moneymaker. I think part of what Park and Rec Department does is it provides quality of life for the residents. And if it costs a little bit out of the tax money to do that or to provide that for the resident, that doesn't concern me.
Right.
So, nice to minimize the margin, but I'm not really overly concerned.
And and sorry to interrupt, but with the closures and the partial closures, I'm pretty sure like less than a handful of those were specifically low attendance. If it was low attendance, it was low attendance because of weather that was looming anyways. Like it was never just, it's bright, sunny day, we only have had 10 people here, so we're gonna close. It was never a decision like that, just to make that clear.
Well, I do see 3 of them were in single digits, so.
For what?
Are in single digits. 1, 4.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And I mean, I'm talking like gloomy days where there's a storm in an hour, we're just waiting for it to happen.
Okay.
So, and I can't control that part,
Currently,
sorry.
Park and Rec does all of Vandahay, right? Meaning all of the lifeguarding, all of the everything affiliated with the actual swimming, but it also does all of the food service.
Yes.
Is there any thought about outsourcing food service to a private company?
It's on the table right now being talked about.
Okay. All right. And then one other quick question. Have there been problems with staffing for Vandahay?
We managed to be fully staffed most of the time. There may have been a handful of days where we might have had to close a pool because I wasn't able to get the schedule full. Kids are leaving town on the weekends, like I said. One of the takeaways that I had from this whole experience is that we really need and I hate to bring this up again, but competitive wages in order to attract and maintain people. I mean, I know for a fact in town, there's other lifeguards making $15.50 an hour, and I'm sitting here trying to pay them $11.50 starting. So that is something that will have to heavily be discussed if this is going to be successful moving forward, or operational hours or something's going to have to give, because I managed to squeak by filling all the spots for the most part. Like I said, there was probably a couple days where we had to maybe close a pool due to staffing issues, but to keep and maintain quality staff, we're going to have that be a discussion coming up.
And how do you go about getting staff?
They apply for jobs and we interview them, and then they're trained.
I mean, do you do recruiting? And if so, when do you begin that?
Yep. So last year we had somebody that was training the guards, and they ran a lifeguarding course in March and April. We started advertising that in February, and it filled up pretty quick. So that's kind of how that process starts, like January, February. We send out also returning packets for people who may or may not be returning. Then we have a good handle on the quality people who are returning to work for us and know based off of that how many we have to hire.
Okay. You said something strangely. You said last year we had.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me kind of think you don't have? Or...
The same person is not staffed by the city at this point in time, so there'll be other avenues for training lifeguards.
Okay.
And then there's other communities that I've actually asked also. They just hire people who are certified lifeguards, and those children get their lifeguards basic or their certifications elsewhere. Like sometimes cities don't provide that training. So.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Alderman Tompkins?
First of all, I forgot to say that this facility is amazing. And if anyone in this room hasn't enjoyed it, you really need to go enjoy it, because it made me so proud of our city. And I just want to thank anyone who donated and all the people who raised money for it, because it truly is a gem of Marshfield. And so my comments are going to come from based on that sentiment, that this is a really, really important thing for our summer. It's really important for the kids and our families to have something to do. It's outdoor, it's healthy, it's recreational, all of that stuff. Following up on what Mr. Witzel said about training, you have a really unique workforce. Your workforce is basically teenagers. Mm-hmm. You have a few college students, I think, were part of your workforce, but the majority were high school students.
Yes.
That is unique in the sense of pay. You touched on that. They don't want a job for the year. They're not supporting their families. They just want a good summer job. So that makes it a little tricky for you to recruit people. Mm-hmm. We also have a small population. You know, compared to Wausau, compared to other places that are a bigger city, they've got just a larger pool of teenagers to recruit from, and we have a smaller pool. So this is what I would just challenge you, because we cannot say that we are not going to be open because we don't have staff. We can't say we're going to start late or close early because we don't have staff, because it's so important for this community. So I would just really emphasize that it is so important for the city, for Parks and Rec, for the council, for all of us to make sure that you are doing the recruiting and the training, and you have maybe excess people that you are hiring or something so that you have the staff for the summer. I would just really emphasize that.
We did do that last year, hired kind of in excess, and then it was availability of like 4 hours per week. So that availability is going to factor heavily into who gets hired again next year or newly hired next year. Because we have tons of kids who want to work there and it's fun, but I also have to make sure that we're able to run. And I can't do that if there's 60 teenagers who want to work 2 hours a week. It's impossible. And that is a challenge that I came across. I was literally, I'm not exaggerating, having to beg people to show up to work. And it worked. I did it, but it was very, very difficult to get those teenagers to show up to work.
Anyone else? Thank you, Amanda and Justin. Keep up the great work. Item L, presentation discussion of Marshfield Fire Department proposed revenue fee schedule presented by Pete Fletty, Fire Chief.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me join via Zoom. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I am at a fire prevention inspection conference in Green Bay currently. So the document you have before you, just a little background on it. So this was actually born out of understanding the 2023 financial difficulties the city is going to face, and also from City Administrator Barg asking all department heads actually to look at different revenue sources that are out there and trying to make ends meet for 2023. The document you have before you has several tables in it. We initially brought this before the Police and Fire Commission on September 15th. The idea was talked about there and then it was actually voted to be moved to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee. So we did that, and Personnel, Budget, and Finance were agreeable to the fees you see in your packet, but also suggested increasing some of the fees in there. After we took a second look at it, we brought it again back before the Police and Fire Commission on October 13th, and the fees again were readjusted. So what you have before you, if you turn to the last page under the recommendation section of the packet I provided, these are the final recommendations of the fees that we are proposing. All the tables before you, I kind of showed the changes that happened at different levels. So the Fire Department false alarm fee schedule is the first table. For the first false alarm, there will be no charge. For the second false alarm at a facility, there will be a $250 charge. Third false alarm, $500 charge. Fourth false alarm, $750 charge. And the fifth and subsequent false alarms at a structure will be $1,000. The fire inspection fee schedule. So we conduct about 1,500 fire inspections per year in the city of Marshfield. This is a service that every fire department provides and is actually required under the Department of Safety and Professional Services. So the initial inspection is at no charge. The first reinspection of a business would be at no charge. So it'd be the follow-up if there were any violations. The second reinspection, there would be a $100 charge. The third reinspection, a $200 charge. Fourth reinspection, a $300 charge. And the fifth and subsequent, we just increased by $100 with no set limit. Other fire service fees in the last table, suggested fees there are motor vehicle accidents, structure fires, vehicle fires, and vehicle extrication services at $500 each. The question was asked at Personnel, Budget, and Finance if what happens if you're in a motor vehicle accident and say the jaws of life needs to be used, the extrication equipment. So it'd be a $500 charge for us responding to that motor vehicle accident, and then another $500 charge being added for the vehicle extrication portion of that. And again, this is to pay for services we provide, equipment, maintenance, purchase of additional equipment. I also want to mention before I leave this to the body to decide what you want to do with this, is that we are not the only fire department looking at these types of fees. It's tough for cities all over based on reduced state funding to municipalities. So once again, we are not the only ones looking at these types of fees. So I will leave it to the body to discuss this. I'll answer any questions you may have. And I believe this is discretion of the council, whether we want to implement this or adjust it or disapprove it.
We have a motion on the table by Alderman Fisher.
A motion to approve.
Yes. Is it second by Alderman Tompkins? Now, is there any discussion? Alderman Whistle?
Thank you. I hate to split hairs, but for my own mind clarification, is there a limit then on the motor vehicle accidents? You spend $500 to show up, you spend $500 to extricate, that's the right word, jaws of life. You have to use it twice because there's two different vehicles. Is that another 500? And then the vehicle starts on fire. Is that another 500? And is it just simply 500 each thing you have to do?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, please vote. All ayes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chief Fleddy. Item M, presentation request to approve health insurance contracts with Security Health Plan for benefit eligible employees for calendar year 2023, introduced by Sarah Dreschel, Human Resources Director, presented by Corey Palmer, Employee Benefits Account Executive M3.
Thank you. Good evening. So this year we did receive our health renewal plan quote from Security Health Plan. That original quote did come back at a 3.5% increase. M3 did work very hard to lower that rate down to a 1.7 increase overall. So the document in the packet kind of goes through the 2020 projection information compared to what 2023 might have. So staff is requesting the approval to renew the health plan for 2023 at the 1.7% increase rate through Security Health, continuing to offer employees two high deductible health plans, the Premier plan and the Simply One plan. And as mentioned, Corey is here from M3 to answer any additional questions.
Motion by Alderman Paschal, second by Alderman Wagner. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, please vote. Nine ayes and Alderman Varsho abstains. Thank you. And item N, request to approve dental insurance contracts with Delta Dental for calendar year 2023, presented by Sarah Dreschel, Human Resources Director.
Thank you again. This year, the city currently does contract with Delta Dental for our dental insurance. They did come back with a no-cost increase or change to the plan design for 2023. So staff is requesting approval of the dental insurance renewal for Delta Dental effective January 1st, 2023.
Motion by Alderman Spiro, second by Alderman Tompkins. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 9 ayes and Alderman Varsho abstains. Request to approve city contribution of $600 single, $1,200 family toward employee HSA accounts in calendar year 2023, presented by Sarah Dreschel, Human Resources Director.
Thank you again. So in 2016, the city did implement high deductible health plans. With that implementation, a health savings account was established to assist employees with that high first dollar deductible amount. So since 2016, we have the city has contributed $600 for single plans and $1,200 for family plans. So the current city's deductibles for Premier Plan and for Simply One plan, they're both the same, $3,000 for a single plan and $6,000 for a family plan. With having 41 employees on the city's health plan with single coverage and 109 employees with family coverage, the contributions are estimated in the packet. So staff is recommending approval to continue the city's health savings account contributions of $600 for single plans and $1,200 for family plans for 2023.
Motion by Alderman Paschal, second by Alderman Wagner. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Oh, excuse me, Alderman Tompkins.
I'm so sorry. I just have a question. Are people allowed to or able to say they don't want something like a benefit? Do they ever, like if they didn't want this high deductible, or maybe they don't, I don't know. Do they have choices?
The only plans that we have for medical are the high deductible health plans. So they would either decide that they want to have a medical plan or they would decide that they would not. Yep.
Anyone else? Please vote. 9 ayes and 1 nay from Alderman Spiros. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.
First reading in ordinance number 1482, approval of 5-year campus master plan for UWSP Marshfield campus, presented by Steve Bard, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, the campus master plan is designed to really provide for orderly growth in certain areas where there's ongoing development and changes in the campus. Examples of other campuses where we have campus master plans are the airport, Central Wisconsin State Fair, medical campus, places like that. And the college is one of those as well. They received a campus master plan approval back in 2017 through 2022 for the first campus master plan at UWSP. It wasn't UWSP at the time. And now they're looking to do one for the next 5 years for 2023 into 2028. The background on this is that there are 6 parcels contained in this area that's designated as a campus master plan, total of 85 acres. Plan calls for a look at the existing conditions, lays that out clearly, and then talks about anticipated future uses in the campus. Are going to be any changes to facilities, building, parking, whatever, that are being contemplated in the next 5 years. It covers everything from education, history of past projects, zoning, again, building, parking facilities, amenities. They're all included as part of the campus master plan. In 2020, the campus or the college looked for a conditional use permit to allow there to be non-students at the villas. And that's the student housing that was built on the opposite side of Fifth Street from the campus itself. And since that time, they have continued to maintain that, but there have been an increasing number of non-students who have been living there. Right now, it's estimated that 70% of the people who live at the villas are in fact students. The remainder are traveling nurses, medical interns, and some other people as well who are not connected with the campus or the medical facility. Looking ahead for the next 5 years, they did back in 2017 propose a telecommunications tower be built. That has not happened, but they've extended that into the next 5-year plan in case that becomes necessary to construct in 2023 through 2028. No other changes are planned in the next 5 years for buildings, parking, biking, walking trails, other amenities, athletic fields, those types of things for the coming 5 years. The Plan Commission did consider this at their meeting on October 18th. They held a public hearing as required by the ordinance. There was no public comment. Commission members did raise the concern again with the villas. They asked where this is headed in the future. Again, initially it was intended to be students only. The campus representatives did indicate that they're trying as hard as they can to fill it with students at UWSP. They also have Mid-State Technical College students who live at the villas as well. And they're heartened by the fact that after 4 years of declining enrollment at the college, they've now flattened out. This year, the enrollment appears to be almost identical to the previous year, which is a victory, moving in the right direction, like I said, after 4 years of decline. So they're hopeful going forward that they'll be able to fill the villas with as many students as possible, rather than people who are not students at the UWSP campus. Because of that, the commission members did ask that even though they were recommending approval of the 5-year campus master plan, that it be reviewed annually to continue to track the residency at the villas. So with that in mind, staff would recommend that there's no action tonight. This is the first reading of this campus master plan of the ordinance. We take any questions, but otherwise we would set it for second reading and adoption to be considered on November 8th.
Alderman Wagner?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Strikes me, I didn't see it in here when I went through it earlier. I may have missed it, but have we had this checked against the airport overlay? What I'm concerned about is that tower. I know it wasn't built this year or in this last 5-year plan.
Yeah,
it is right on the approach of 1916. So.
Yeah, and again, they're not proposing building the tower right now. They're just holding it as a placeholder that might be something they would look at in the coming 5 years, and they would definitely have to look at the airspace issue.
Yeah, because that would probably poke right into the. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you. This is just a small thing, but we're talking about the campus. It's my understanding that the tennis courts are in quite disrepair. Is there any mention of them improving those, redoing them?
I'd have to look back at the 5-year CIP and see if they indicated that as part of their proposed improvements. And I don't recall offhand, but I'll send an email out to the council after taking a look.
Any other questions? There's no action taken this evening. A second reading adoption set for November 8th. Thank you. Item Q, discussion policy regarding allowing non-residents on city committees, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you. Back in late 2018, the council did approve a policy regarding the possible appointment of non-residents to city boards, commissions, and committees. You have it in front of you. I put it in the packet. At that time, there were only minimal exceptions allowed for people to be on our boards, committees, and commissions if they were not living within the city limits. Just to touch on those briefly, one being the library board can have members from participating municipalities. For example, the town of McMillan is a participant, and therefore that allows them the option of being on the library board. The business improvement district members may be downtown property owners or managers. That was permitted. And then the economic development board member representing Marshfield Utilities could be a non-resident. That person is appointed by utilities as they see fit. And again, the utility service area goes beyond the city of Marshfield anyway. There was an exception put in there, and that is that non-residents may be considered if the council, when they consider the appointment, finds that by a 2/3 vote, qualified candidates either don't reside within the city that they can find, or that they found somebody of the mayor making this appointment has found someone to be having the experience, education, background, skills, and abilities that would really benefit that committee, board, or commission, even though they live outside of the city limits. That may be considered again with a supermajority. We had a kind of a crazy meeting a couple meetings back where we had some confusion about whether or not somebody was a city resident when they were being considered for a utilities commission appointment. Again, I do apologize for that. Going forward, I think we've agreed that we will make sure that that is called out to the council so there's no misunderstanding about whether a non-resident is being considered for an appointment. But what's come out of recent conversations with the council are a couple things about reviewing the policy itself. One that Rebecca Spiros, Councilmember Spiros brought up recently, and that is whether we would consider business owners and managers for all of our boards and committees based on the fact that they have a stake in the community, even though they're non-residents, they own property or manage property within the city limits. Others have been talked about along the way as well as possibilities that might be looked at in order to better make available more candidates. But again, the preference has generally been for people who are residents of our community. So with that in mind, I turn it over to the body for discussion and possible changes to that policy.
Alderman Paschal?
Thank you. I think that we should keep it the way it is, except for the utilities. That does cover an area outside the city, and I think that having a member from outside the city would be acceptable. I would put a caveat on there to limit it to one member. I'd hate to see a city commission or a city committee that's controlled by people who don't live in the city.
Are you talking, if I can clarify, about a person who's not the utilities appointment? In other words, the Utilities Commission could decide to appoint some employee of the utilities staff, for example, that is not a resident, because they can appoint anybody they want to. Are you talking about making it possible for the Utilities Commission to have an additional member that would be a non-resident, or just leaving it at the appointment that they choose to make themselves? If that makes sense.
Well, to cover the situation that we had last meeting when there was a person who turned out to be not a resident of the city, if that person had been allowed to be on the commission, is what I'm talking about.
Because when someone is given to us by the Utilities Commission as their appointed representative to the EDB, we don't even check or ask as to whether or not that person is a resident.
About that. I'm talking about the utility commission.
The other members, members.
Not the representative to the EDB.
Oh, you're talking the commission itself, not the, I'm sorry.
Itself.
The commission itself.
Yes.
I apologize. Gotcha.
Alderman Wagner?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Mr. Paschal about especially the out-of-city and for the utility committee. Would they have a district that they serve? And essentially what's happening is, I think we go, in some cases, all the way up to Stratford, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know how far east or west they go on it. But the people who live in those districts don't have any representation on that board. And basically, I think they need representation. And I would see it as, if the question was asked as, should it be one of the 5 or should it be one or 2 of 7? I would say they would have to add 2. There's also been a complaint made that the council representatives who are supposed to be representing the citizens of Marshfield on there don't have a vote on that. I think that if we are going to make changes on this, we should also make the change so that they have the vote also. But I do agree that the outside the city, if they're on the grid, if they're on Marshfield Utilities grid, they should be represented by somebody on that board. Thank you.
I apologize for misunderstanding, Nick, what you're saying. I do, and I think that that's a very appropriate suggestion.
Alderman Wagner, what's a motion?
Second. Oh, I'd make the motion to approve the, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I hit the wrong button, so I'm up a little bit there. Yeah, but I'd make the motion to include residents, or non-residents on the grid, on the committee.
Okay.
Can you just clarify very specifically which committee, please? Because we don't have a recommendation.
On the utility committee. We were talking about the utility.
By on the grid, you mean? By on the grid, you mean within the service area that they provide, correct?
Yeah. I guess I refer to the grid.
And is there a second? Alderman Tompkins, thank you. Any discussion? Alderman Tompkins?
Sorry, is it are we going to do a different motion or a different discussion about becoming voting members? Like the people we send from council? Is that a completely different?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Before we proceed with that, keep in mind that this is right now controlled by an ordinance.
Yeah, true.
So what's being suggested, that's all fine, but what I would suggest is that the motion be made that a proposed ordinance be prepared to accomplish the goal that you're looking to do. I don't want to make confusion like we're passing an ordinance here today, which really would be procedurally improper anyway, but just so that it's very clear that what you're talking about is you're telling staff to put together a proposed ordinance for you to consider in the future to add and make sure it's clear whether that's 1 or 2 members of that particular body.
True. It was initially proposed as a policy, but it was codified. I apologize, Big Ben.
Any other discussion? Alderman Spiros.
Thank you. I agree with everything that's said as far as the utility. I do have one little thing I want to bring up as far as this that we're looking at. Number 3 says the Economic Development Board member representing the Marshfield Utilities. I would be inclined that our Economic Development Board shouldn't have that restriction, the member representing the Marshfield Utilities, because I believe equally that if we have business owners that are in Marshfield that are paying taxes, I think that there are a lot of them that I can think of a lot of them that would be very beneficial on the Economic Development Board without the caveat of it just being the only person who can live out of town is the one that the utilities suggest be on the Economic Development Board. I don't like that caveat. I would like to see that removed. Yes, Hap? Oh. I seen you. So that would be something I would like to hear from the rest of the council to see what their opinions on that would be, because I just feel like they have a lot to offer as far as economic development goes.
Yes, Hap.
And all I was going to say is that keep in mind, you still have on that the exception that we dealt with the last time, which is sort of the ability for the body to make an exception. And unless that's changed, that still is an option for you to use to fill those positions. So just so that's clear too.
Alderman Fisher?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do agree with Alderwoman Spiros' comments about the EDB. I was actually going to say something similar, but I also think that one thing we should also consider is a lot of the committees that we have, I'm going to just use the Parks and Recreation Committee, for example. That committee oversees parks that people even outside of our city use. So let's Wildwood Park, for example, the zoo. These are hopefully things that are attracting people to the city who live outside of town. I think when I heard, I think it was at the last meeting when Alderwoman Spiros brought this up, I thought it was a good idea to at least maybe not give a free rein where every committee has non-citizens, but maybe certain specific committees we should look at and go, can we take people who have an interest or an expertise in that area and have them serve on that committee? So Economic Development Board, for example, I think is a great one. If someone has a certain expertise that we want to utilize, and they don't live within the city, I think it's disappointing to me that we would not even consider them to serve on that committee. So those are just my 2 cents. I mean, I agree with the motion and I will vote with the motion, but I'm disappointed that we're not looking at this a little deeper and a little wider. Thank you.
Alderman Tompkins?
All right, I'm just gonna, I'm trying to do pros and cons. So I'm trying to think big and I'm trying to think outside of just Marshfield. So I'm just gonna mention a few things that I feel like we need to think about before we just pass something and then we say, oh, oops. So one is we got an email that said we need to be really careful about conflict of interest. And I think that's true. And I think that there needs to be due diligence on that. Two, you know, do we have any sort of parameter? Let's say the owner of Quick Trip, who has a business in Marshfield, suddenly decides he wants to become on our board. Like, do we have any geographic parameter for someone who's a business owner who pays Marshfield taxes? I think we might open up a can of worms of who gets to influence policy in the city, and I think we need to be careful about that. As far as Parks and Rec, if someone doesn't want to live in Marshfield because taxes are too high in Marshfield, then, I mean, I feel like taxpayers get to be represented. And we represent people who pay taxes. I want to hear from people who pay taxes, otherwise move into Marshfield. And I maybe this even goes for the utilities. We have people who pay electricity, but our utilities, is Marshfield Utilities also our water and our sewer? Am I right about that?
Water and electric.
It's water and electric. So they're not paying water. They're not paying part of that. So anyhow, I'm just saying we might need to be careful. Are we opening up something where really that will influence the city when really people might not have the exact amount of representation?
Alderman Wagner?
Okay, okay, thank you. I didn't, I was focusing on the utility when I did that. Obviously, there are more issues here. And if the council would like me to, we could restructure this motion on an amendment, as I suppose. But we could restructure this motion and so that we instruct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance that would address 3 issues, and I think it's just 3. You'd add any more? I don't know, but I think the issues are okay. The utilities one issue, the utility representative on the Economic Development Board is the second, and the third I think was what was was that the one that you just brought up that you thought it was a conflict of interest or addresses conflict of interest? So, okay, Adam brought it up. Fine. We could amend it to have it look at that, or to deal with those 3 things. Although I'm a little foggy on what they want on the last one. So, if you want, I'll offer an amendment to instruct the city attorney to come back to us with language on those 3 items.
One thing I want to point out is that when some of the issues that have been discussed still talk about the idea that you may, under certain circumstances, want to include someone that's outside the city limits because of special expertise or because of some other reason. You've got that built in here now. So the one example that was discussed, you have the ability to do that. If you had a business owner and that was looked at in terms of how this is done, you would have the opportunity to do that. So again, I'm not sure if what you're really saying is if that's the purpose of doing it, you've already have that in your ordinance. If the idea is you want to include members on certain boards or whatever, for me to do an ordinance, I kind of need to know, I know which ones we've talked about, but, utility, if that's the idea, is that you want to add one into there that can be outside city residents, that's fine. The Economic Development Board was used as an example, but is that one that where you're looking at that, you know that if somebody's coming in from outside and you have a list of candidates, but you realize, hey, this person's a good person to add because of the type of business they're associated with or because of their experience, have we caught them already in the catch-all that allows you to make an exception to this anyway? And the Parks and Rec was a little bit ambiguous. It was used as an example, but I'm not sure that's what you want. So I think it's great for you to, direct me to do that, but I think you have to fine point which ones you're talking about and what you want. This is a policy question, and it is definitely not for me to make that decision.
Alderman Paschal?
Yeah, I think that Mr. Wagner was a little hasty on his motion earlier, but since we do have a motion on the floor, we shouldn't be talking about the EDB or anything else. We should be talking about the Utility Commission and decide on that and then move forward. Thank you.
Good point.
Alderman Spiros?
Okay, so this has gotten a bit confusing. I think I'm going to make an amendment to Mr. Wagner's motion. I believe that his motion was to remove the residency clause from the Utility Commission appointment. And I would like to add that we remove the residency clause and the clause that says that the utility can appoint an outside member to the Marshfield Utility. Wait a minute. Geez, the Economic Development Board. So I would like to amend the motion to say that committee members can be outside of the city if they own businesses in the city of Marshfield. And I'd like that to include the Economic Development Board and the Utility Commission, in addition to the bid board and the library board that are already here. And I'll make that as an amendment to the motion.
So motion by Alderman Spiros, second by? Second by Alderman Fisher?
Nick's looking for.
On your motion, does that include anyone from anywhere in the world because you didn't specify?
I believe I said of people who own a business in the city of Marshfield.
Okay.
Which is a change of what I did.
So that means,
Doesn't matter.
any other discussion? Yes, Steve.
I guess I just add, then Councilmember Spiros, would your motion leave intact the fact that for other committees, boards, and commissions, it would still be possible, the same rule would be the 2/3 rule for people who have special background experience?
Correct.
That wouldn't change that, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Six to 3 passes. Thank you.
So right.
That was on the amendment.
Yes, that was on the amendment, correct. So we need a motion to,
It's been made, but just ask what.
okay, the main motion is,
The main motion was to direct the city attorney to work on an ordinance to include non-residents on the Marshfield Utility Committee that would include residents in the service area.
that's been superseded by the amendment, so.
Including
It's-
now the amendment, she asked the original motion, so it does now include the amendment about Marshfield Utility Representative on EDB and Library Board to include business owners. And I see Jill's.
Jill, would you like to come up to the podium?
Oh, yeah, library board.
The library board composition is dictated by the state. It can't be amended at this level, so.
Thank you, Jill. Glad you're here. Always. Okay, so we have a motion by Alderman Wagner, second by Alderman Tompkins.
I didn't catch the library board was added. So, I mean, and in addition, there's a requirement for some clarification because you kind of added on the idea that they have a business in, and I think we just want to make sure that it's clear that the intention to have a business in Marshfield would not apply to the utility. That wasn't part of the original motion. I'm not sure if it was intended that second one, and I read it or understood it to not be.
There's no intention in changing the bid or I mean, it's listed the way that it's listed. Leave it the same. Leave it like number 1's listed, number 2's listed. Just leave it the same and add the Utility Commission and the Economic Development Board. Remove the residency requirements from both of those and have them be business owners. The rest all stays the same. I only said that because it's just adding to the list. There's no intention to change it.
There still needs to be a little bit of a clarification because
How do you want to clarify it?
the only question is just that the way that you indicated that there, and I think the original motion or the amendment may have indicated that you're removing the residency requirement from the Marshfield utility altogether. When Mr. Wagner indicated it, I think he said you're going to add a person in. And the way that that was just stated is you're going to make that part of the exceptions so that you could have anybody in the utility be a non-resident. And I'm not sure that that's the intention. So just so that there's clarification before we move to the final decision. You follow what I mean? I think that's how it was read. So when Alderman Wagner made his motion, he said you were going to add one person to the utility commission that could be a non-resident?
I think he just wanted to remove, I think he said remove the residency requirement to include service area. I don't believe he said add a member. He talked about adding voting rights for older people, but they moved on from that discussion and never added to that.
In other words, it would now be 5 members, as it has always been, but one of those 5 could be a non-resident living within the service area of Marshfield Utility.
Okay, that's the point that I'm making, and there's confusion. That's all I'm trying to say, is that when this originally was discussed, you were going to take one member off of that board that could be a non-resident, so that one of the 5 members could be a non-resident. As this got amended, I think the references were now that all members of the utility could be non-residents and could be, so we just want to be careful that that's how that's intended.
That's what they voted on.
It comes back to how the amendment was read.
If I was going to just catch up a little. Yeah. I mean, seriously, think about it. Yes. Alderman Spiros, did you want to make another comment? Your light is on. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Alderman Tompkins, did you want to make another comment? That's all right.
Well, I would just say that the last 10 minutes has not cleared anyone's idea of what's going on. I don't know what we are able to do, like procedural wise, but I think we definitely need a pause. I don't know if that means we delay a vote or what we do, but this is not clear. We need clarity.
So I think you go back to the motion to amend and how that was read at this point. And remember, the other side of this is for me to draft it. So we're still going to come back to
I was counting on my reporting to know.
Oh,
how I
okay.
worded that because I did not get to write while typing, but it was very specific to include Marshfield Utilities, Economic Development Board, Bid Board, Library, that we would remove residency requirement for business owners.
Okay, and that was my point, is we went from adding one person that could be a non-resident to saying all members of the Marshfield Utility Commission could be non-residents. And if that's the intent of the body, that's totally fine. But just so we're clear when we make that motion. So at this point, the way it stands is the amendment made it so that all 5 members of the Marshfield Utility could be non-residents.
Right.
Okay.
And also the amendments, oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The amendment also says now that only business owners can be part of it. I mean, this is a, yeah.
Well. Okay, Alderman Spiros?
Okay, this has just gotten way out of hand. So the intention, and I will restate my amendment, okay? The intention is that we don't grow the size of any board, committee, commission, any of that. We're gonna keep them all the same size they are now, all right? We're just going to remove the fact that you have to be a resident of the Marshfield Utilities or the Economic Development Board. We can leave the bid board exactly how it's written, leave the library board exactly how it's already written. Don't change anything there. I guess it's clear. And that was my amendment.
And that was the vote. That's fine.
Okay, so I guess we have a motion on the table by Alderman Wagner, second by Alderman Tompkins. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, thank goodness. Yes, ma'am.
Can we postpone this vote until we have some clarity? Is that possible?
How much more do you, yeah.
I'm just. That amendment, when I read it, included bid, library is what I repeated and what. If that was not the intent of the amendment, that's still how it was read and what they voted on.
So I make a motion that we postpone this until we have written out what the amendment is and what the original motion is, so that we actually can see what was voted on and what is proposed for the full thing.
And that's a motion. I mean, and to clarify all of this, I've heard all of this, we've gone through this, I can draft an ordinance anyway that you guys can get back in front of you that'll address this, and you can make a decision with something in front of you, but you do now have to deal with that motion.
Alderman Spiros?
Just to be clear, when I made my motion, I didn't say that every person needed to, or that we could only appoint business owners. Okay, that was not what I said. I said that we remove the residency requirement. I did not say that we remove the residency requirement and make everybody a business owner. So I don't know where that came from. I don't know why there's so much confusion. It's a pretty straightforward motion. I'm literally trying to explain this as clear as I can be.
You added that they could remove the residency requirement and include business owners, but I think they're arguing that it's restricted to only non-residents.
No, I never said that.
Business.
I did not say that.
That was the impression of the motion that I read.
Residency requirement and allow people who own businesses and pay taxes to be on these very important boards.
No. Okay. Motion by Alderman.
No.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jess.
Okay, now.
Okay. Motion by Alderman Tompkins. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Wagner. And now is there any more discussion? Seeing none, hallelujah, please vote. Sorry, this is the post.
Five to four against.
5-4, the nays have it.
That was just to postpone. We have to go back to the
Correct.
original.
Right, let's go back.
Phew.
Yeah, we're not done.
That was a big deal.
We're not done.
Yes.
Okay. Are we done?
Are we done?
No,
could be
we
done.
have
Now we
to
have to
vote
vote
on
on
the
the
original
original
motion with
motion.
the
Oh, we
amended.
have to vote on the original motion, which, would you
With the
read that one more time, Jess? Thank you very much. Jess is going to read the original motion that we have to vote on.
We are voting on the amended original motion, so we would be including non-residents on the Marshfield Utility Commission if they are in the service area. We are going to include business owners to be allowed to be on committees for Marshfield Utilities and Economic Development Board.
Okay, you want to clear?
Marshfield Utilities Commission would be allowed to have non-residents who are residing in the service area. And the Marshfield Utilities and Economic Development Board, the amendment was to allow business owners to also be on those committees, as well as residents.
Okay, motion by Alderman Wagner, second by Alderman Tompkins.
There was no.
Okay, but
This
to
was
have,
the original, right?
to allow one member of the Utilities Commission to be a non-resident, correct? Not to allow all members.
Right, one member of each, correct? One of utilities and one of EDB to be, okay.
No, that's,
Yowza, yeah,
One member of Marshfield Utilities.
pardon me?
One member of Marshfield Utilities is the only one that's been discussed with a limit for the number.
Okay, so EDB can be anybody as long as they're own a business. Okay, thank you. Wow, okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote on the original motion
Amended.
As amended.
as amended.
Okay.
6-3 passes. Thank you. Item R, review city's organizational chart requested by Councilmember Fisher, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you. At our last meeting, I believe it was, in items for future agendas, Councilmember Fisher asked that we take a look at the city's org chart, which has not been done at the council level for probably quite some time. It's been updated relatively recently, so the one you have in your packet should be current as best I know. And I just present it to Councilmember Fisher or anybody else for comment or discussion.
Alderman Fisher?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Steve, first and foremost, for bringing this to the council. I think it's something that we need to seriously look at, and for multiple reasons. So first and foremost, we do have quite a few vacancies just in the development services department. 3 key staff are no longer there. As much as I'd like to believe we will fill those 3 positions quickly, we have struggled to fill 2 of those positions over a long period of time. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I think even just with the development services director, we've put up 3 different, we've tried to recruit 3 different times. And that's part of my concern is going, we can't keep doing business this way. So I feel like we need to find a way to alleviate what I perceive as maybe some pressure on staff to go, one, if we can't fill these positions, what kind of changes should we consider? 2, I also just look at how many people are reporting to the administrator alone, and that seems like a large number of reports. So I'm not coming here with necessarily with any answers, but I feel like the council needs to have a serious conversation. And I don't think we can do it in one meeting, but I think we need to have a serious conversation about this org chart. And are there ways to make changes to be more effective with the management of the city? So I look at it two ways. I mean, two possibilities. One, we continue to have maybe this be an ongoing conversation among the 10 of us. Or the other idea I had was maybe Steve should put together an ad hoc committee or a task force. He's done that with the compensation for the fire and police department, where he brought staff and council representation to look at that issue. I think that might be another idea. If we don't want to tackle this amongst the 10 of us, do we bring staff and maybe 2 or 3 council members together to look at this issue and bring back some ideas to the broader council? So those are some things, that's, I guess, my train of thought and what I'm thinking through. But I think we need to realize that we're in a very unique job market, and we're not going to necessarily fill positions like we used to. And so, not to use cliches, but are we living in a new normal, and how do we address that new normal in the job, in the job world of filling vacancies, and how do we address that with this org chart? Thank you.
Alderman Wagner? Alderman Paschal?
I would agree that I think Stephen and I have had a discussion about this in the past about the number of people that report to him and how we would restructure a table in order to alleviate some of that. But unfortunately, the only way to do that is to create new positions and or eliminate some positions or move positions around. And I don't think we're in a position right now to look at new positions. So, but I agree that this is a thing that we have to continue to have discussions about.
Alderman Wagner? Is your microphone on, Alderman Wagner?
Okay.
Start over.
I turned it off during the last debate for a good reason. But anyway, we need to make it a little bit more efficient, and so there's not as much stress on the employees that are the leadership employees that we've got. Mr. Paschal has it right. There's the unfortunate thing about embarking down this road is that we're going to have another committee. I know you're all looking forward to that. And that committee should meet long and work hard before it makes any recommendations to the council about it. I've had to do this a couple of times in my career, and when I saw the org chart presented as the way it was, I thought, boy, do we need some work. And so I would suggest that Steve appoint a committee and maybe put 2 or 3 council members on it, and basically, lock in a room and don't come out till you got it solved, right? But I agree that it has to be changed.
Alderman Fisher?
Well, my first question, thank you, Madam Chair. If I may ask Alderman Wagner just a question, is that a motion, your recommendation?
Do we need a motion for that?
As information only, we should not make a motion on this item.
Do you really want me to make another motion? Really?
It was quite.
Nope.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that you certainly can do that anyway. So
Just direction.
yeah, I think that's the way to.
Yes, Steve.
If I can make one comment, I think it's a fine idea, and I'll start that process. I will say, going back to where Councilmember Fisher started, we are on now our 4th attempt to find a development services director. We've used twice our own posting. 3rd time we used a consulting firm. Now we're starting with another posting ourselves, but we are looking for the help, possibly if you had another consulting firm who looks for executive level positions. So I think that may end up being a separate issue at some point in terms of the structure of that one department by itself. There's been conversation about whether or not, to look at splitting economic development off from, the planning and zoning side. But right now we'll just start out with it all maybe together and dig in, and that'll be one of the first issues, perhaps. I don't know, that's up to the body, but I'll certainly start the ball rolling.
Alderman Fisher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do agree with Alderman Wagner's recommendation. I think, Steve, you putting together an ad hoc committee of both staff and 3 council members would be a great idea. And I definitely want some staff input because staff day in, day out has to function within this org chart. So we need their expertise to speak into this. But I also want that council representation. So thank you.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, move on to item S. Appointment of Rachel Stankowski, 1515 Heidi Lane, replacing Jamie Henderson for an at-large position on the library board, presented by me. You all have Rachel's information in your packet. There is no recommendation for action at this point. Action will be set for November 8th meeting.
Madam Chairman, can you ask the lady to appear for us at the November 8th meeting?
Pardon me?
Can you ask the lady to appear in front of the council on November 8th?
Absolutely. We'll see if she can make it for the next meeting. Yes, thank you. And if she can't make it, she'll bring another description. Is that what you'd like, Ed?
Just leave it everywhere. Well, I'm not going to go anywhere else on that.
Okay, thank you.
Jesus.
Item T, adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute, Chapter 19.85 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public businesses, whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Possible sale of city-owned property located within TIFT District Number 13. Possible renewal of ambulance contracts with Marshfield Clinic Health Systems. Motion by Alderman Paschal, second by Alderman Handler. Please vote to go into closed session. All ayes. Thank you.